As chairman of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, it is my honor, Bert, to welcome you into our family. And Commissioner, if you would read the inscription on Bert's plaque, please.
Rick Albert Blyleven, Bert, Minnesota, American League, 1970 to 1976, 1985 to 1988. Texas American League, 1976 and 1977. Pittsburgh National League, 1978 to 1980. Cleveland American League, 1981 to 85. California American League, 89 to 90 and 1992. Determined, durable, and fun-loving Dutchman who baffled big league batters with a cruel and knee-buckling breaking ball. Recorded 3,701 strikeouts, third most all-time when he retired. Pitched 22 major league seasons, recorded 287 career wins, 242 complete games, 4,970 innings pitched, and an astounding 60 career shutouts. Fanned at least 200 batters in 8 seasons. A 2-time World Series champion with the 1979 Pirates and the 1987 Minnesota Twins. Posted a 5-1 mark in 8 career postseason games.
You know, Harold, before the whole Circle Me Bert campaign that he enjoys currently as a color analyst, there was this big thing where Bert used to snip the tie of whoever he was standing next to. He'd have a pair of scissors with him, and at any given moment, he'd cut a tie in half. I'm wondering if somebody's going to get him here as he makes his speech this afternoon.
Not a bad call. Not a bad call. I think they may, I don't know, that'd be interesting to see. You know, I was thinking about, the controversy of him getting into the Hall of Fame. 60 shutouts, Matt. That's a lot.
I love the wording on the plaque, a cruel and knee-buckling curveball. Let's listen in to Bert Blyleven.
First of all, you were all hereby circled, okay? Jane Forbes Clark, Commissioner Bud Selig, and Jeff Idelson, thank you very much for the introduction. And I guess I have to ask the first thing over here to cameras. Are we live? Okay, just want to make sure. I want to thank Cooperstown and the Baseball Writers Association for allowing me 45 minutes for my speech here this afternoon. I know I'm a rookie and to be not seen and not heard from, but today being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, I'm very proud to be the first-born Dutchman being inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's also a great honor to be inducted with Roberto Alomar and Pat Gillick. Congratulations to you two and to your families. Congratulations. And Robbie, don't worry. A lot of people say my English is my second language, too. I'd like to thank all the Hall of Famers that came here today to make this a special weekend. I know that I'm a rookie, like I mentioned. I'm to be seen and not heard from, but I was never that way. I only wish that some of the Hall of Famers that had a huge impact on my career could have been here today. I know in my heart, though, that Harmon Killebrew, Willie Stargell, Bob Feller, Chuck Tanner, and Kirby Puckett are looking down at all of us right now. My prayers go out to Annie Feller over there and all the family and members. Those guys, they helped mentor me. My prayers go out to my good friend and Hall of Famer Gary Carter and his family. I know Gary's watching. Gary, keep battling the way that you always have, and you'll fight this thing. Plus, Plus, Gary, the ball was foul, okay? Let's get that perfectly straight. You know, life is so precious, and we should all live our lives like there is no tomorrow. Today's a day for me to give thanks to so many people that made it possible for me to be standing here. First and foremost, the good Lord. Thank you, Lord, for giving me the drive and determination to succeed. My parents, Joe and Jenny Blyleven. After battling Parkinson's for many years, my pops passed away in 2004. I wish he was here. But you know, Mom, I know he's up there looking down right now. Mommy, I love you. To my wife, Gail, thank you for loving me and being my best friend. Baby, I love you. To my children, to my grandchildren, to my brothers and sisters, from my sister Joanne, get out of the way, I can't see, to my sister Betsy, to my sister Trudy, to my brother Joe, to my son Tim, to my son Todd, my son Kip, to my son David. You'd think I'd buy my wife some shoes, my God, to my daughter Kim, and all our grandchildren and their loved ones. A special thank you to Whitney Solover for taking care of my family and friends. Whitney with the Hall of Fame. We all know, I mean, we should give her a standing ovation right here. All the family, what she has done for us, unbelievable. Whitney, thank you. I know you're back there somewhere. We get out of life, but what we put into it. The same could be said about baseball. I was born in Zeiss, Holland in 1951. My parents decided to leave Holland in 1953 with 3 children, not a lot of money, but a lot of determination. We first went to Canada, spent 4 years in Canada before we immigrated in the United States in 1957. I was introduced to baseball by my friends and my dad. My dad became a huge baseball fan by listening to the radio with Vin Scully and Jerry Doggett, and who are, of course, cover the LA Dodgers. I listened to the game with them all the time. My dad was a huge Frank Howard fan. He liked Howard because of his size and how far he could hit the ball. I used to keep score listening to the game, especially when Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale pitched. I loved putting down the K for a strikeout. I started playing baseball when I was 9 years old. All I wanted to do was throw that baseball. Ask my sisters and brothers, that's all I do. I just want to play catch. And when they were done, if my dad would come home, I'd play catch with him. And if they didn't want to play anymore, I'd find a block wall and throw that ball against. I guess you could say I was kind of like Forrest Gump. He ran, I threw. In Little League, I started out as a catcher. And finally, my coach, Mr. Price, noticed that I threw the ball back harder to him than he threw to me. So he asked me if I wanted to pitch, and I said, sure, I'll try it. Once I started pitching, though, my dad told me that I couldn't throw a curveball till I was about 13 or 14 years old. Why? Because he had listened to an interview with Vin Scully and Sandy Koufax. Sandy told Vin, because of his elbow problems, that if he ever had a son, he wouldn't let him throw a curveball till he was about 13 or 14 years old. Sandy, I don't know if you remember that interview, but my dad did. Plus, my dad straightened bumpers for a living, and sometimes my head, so I listened. Sandy, I also learned the curveball from you. Listening to Vin Scully describe your curveball, the drop called back then, I always visualized the rotation of that baseball. And once I did get older, and I developed it by finding the right grip on that baseball and utilizing the seams of the ball to make it spin and curve. So thank you, Sandy Koufax. My mom and dad went to almost every high school game I played in. My dad was not liked by too many umpires, because if we lost, of course, it was the umpire's fault. Many times he'd be ordered off the field and off the school grounds. My mother actually sometimes would actually sit on the opposing team's side because she was embarrassed of our dad. I did learn my Dutch stubbornness and determination from my parents. They expected us to work hard and never give up. Mom, thank you. Thank you and Dad for teaching all your children what love and hard work is all about and your dedication to our family. My mom and dad are my mentors and my heroes. I signed out of high school in 1969 with the Minnesota Twins. Twin scout Jesse Flores and Dick Winsek came to our house to sign me. And after I signed, I remember Jesse Flores bet my dad a steak dinner that I would be in the big leagues in less than 2 years. Well, he must have known something because I was up in the big leagues less than a year. Jesse got his steak. I got called up to the big leagues on June 1st, 1970. I remember I was in Evansville, Indiana. I was playing for Evansville, Indiana for the Evansville triplet, and we were on a road trip. We got rained out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Eric Soderholm, a roommate of mine in AAA, he and I decided to go to a movie because the game was canceled for that night. We knew we couldn't go to a late movie because there's always a curfew in baseball. It's usually, you know, if the game is called, it's usually 3 hours after the game. So we went to an early movie. By the time we got back to the hotel, it was about 8 o'clock at night, and Bob Gebhardt, then a pitcher for the Twins, and he's been in baseball a long, long time, he actually was waiting in the lobby for him, and he said, "Ralph Rowe, our manager, wants to see you." Well, I'm 19 years old. You know, I didn't know. I didn't break curfew. I didn't know what it was all about. So I went up to Ralph Rowe's room, my manager, and he said, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Well, you know, we went to a movie." I'm thinking, you know, what did I do wrong? And he informed me that the Twins had some injuries in their starting rotation. They were looking for help. And he handed me a piece of paper. It was something like this, but as a telegram. And it said, "To Bert Blyleven, welcome to the major leagues. Report to Mr. Rigney immediately in Boston." Of course, Mr. Rigney was our manager. And I looked at that piece of paper, and the Twins got me a flight out that night. And by the time I arrived in Boston, it was about 1:30 at night. And before I was going to check in, I noticed there's nobody in the lobby. The lobby was pretty quiet. So I was going to check in, and I kept looking at this telegram. It said, "Report to Mr. Rigney immediately." So I went to the front desk and asked what room Mr. Rigney was in, and I went and I banged up on his door, and it's probably closer to 2 now, and I think I woke him up. And he, of course, he answered probably about 5 minutes later. And he finally came to the door, and I said, "Bert Blyleven." He said, "Yeah, I know you, son." I said, "You know, welcome. What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, the telegram says report to you immediately." So I think a light went off in his head because all of a sudden he said, "Hold on a second." He went back into his room, got a rooming list of all the players on the team. He said, "Now that you've come to wake me up," he said, "I want you to go to all your teammates and tell them that you're here." I'm 19 years old. I mean, you know, I'm a rookie. So, of course, I leave. He said, "Before you check in," he said, asked me, he said, "Have you checked in yet?" And I said, "No, not yet." He said, "But before you check in," he said, "you come back and report to me. And remember the curfew." So finally, I come back, and it's got to be 3:30 now by the time I come back to his room, and this time he's waiting up for me. And he said, "Well, did you say hello to everybody?" I said, "I tried." He said, "What do you mean you tried?" I said, "I tried, but nobody was in yet." I made my manager a lot of money that night. I didn't make good friends. Well, I joined a team in Boston, had a chance to sit for a couple games and watch Jim Cott and Jim Perry pitch. Two guys that I can't thank enough throughout my playing career, what they meant to me as mentors when I first came up. And I want to thank Jim Cott for the narration of the introduction to me. He's a great man, a fellow Dutchman. But my first game I got a chance to pitch was June 5th, 1970. And on that narration that Jim Cott said, my first major league batter I faced, Lee May, hit a home run. But there were prior things that happened to that, I think, that set it up right off the get-go, because I had a chance to watch, like I said, Jim Perry and Jim Cott. What did they do? Because they're big leaguers now. What did they do to prepare themselves for that start to go out to the bullpen and start throwing? So I watched for 2 days. And finally, June 5th came as my turn. So I went out, and I got to the ballpark the same time that Jim Cott and Jim Perry did. I did everything that they did. I went in and saw old Doc Lentz, our trainer, and I got some baby oil on my arm just to protect my arm. And all of a sudden, you know, I hurry up. I know that I was a little behind. I was very nervous. I got dressed real quick, ran down to the tunnel, almost out to the dugout. Mr. Rigney was there posting a lineup score card, and he looked me up and down. He said, "Bert, are you nervous?" 19 years old, going to make my first major league start. No, I'm not nervous. And he pulled me back into the runway even a little bit more, and he said, "Are you sure you're not nervous?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "You know, why do you ask?" He said, "Listen, Bert," he said, "I don't know how you did it in high school, and I don't know how you did it in the minor leagues." He said, "But up here in the majors, we try to wear our athletics reporter on the inside." So I had to go back in and change. But about a half hour later, I found myself standing in front of my first major league hitter, and my catcher was George Meadowall. And the first pitch I ever threw in the big leagues, I think he leaped for it. And somehow I got the count to 3 balls and 2 strikes. And at that time, I was a 2-pitch pitcher, a fastball and a curveball. Here it is. If you can hit it, hit it. You know, and that's the way I was taught back then. So I get the count to 3 balls and 2 strikes. George Meadowall puts down fastball, 1 for fastball. I'm shaking out there. I shake him off. So George is probably thinking, what a gutsy young kid. He wants to come with that curveball right off the get-go. Proudly puts down 2. I shake him off. He calls time. Do you have a third pitch? He asked me. I said, no. I said, George, I'm going to remember this guy the rest of my life. I said, I don't know what to throw. What do you suggest? He said, I'll tell you what. I'll go back. I'll put fastball away, down and away, and just throw the ball right through my glove. Yes, sir. Went back. Sure enough, 3-2, puts the sign down and away. I throw that ball right through the glove, but Lee May's bat got in the way, and he hit the ball 400 feet over the right field fence. Yeah, wasn't that funny at the time, folks? But as a kid growing up, I collected bubblegum cards, and I knew I'm on the mound, and I knew that there was going to be a Bert Blyleven bubblegum card made. And as Lee May hit this home run, of course, he goes first to second, and I have my head down. I'm frustrated already. My first major league batter is hit a home run, and Frank Howard is like 3rd or 4th up. He's my dad idol. How far is he going to hit the ball? So I'm thinking about all this stuff after giving up the home run, and all of a sudden Lee May rounds third base, and my head is down, and I see my manager, Bill Rigney, coming out. And I'm thinking, on the back of my bubblegum card, it's going to say, Bert Blyleven, 0-1, an ERA of infinity. I thought he was going to come take me out. But he left me in, and he said something to me that I will never forget. He said, you know what, son, that's not the last home run you'll give up. The man was a genius. Over 22 years, I gave up only 429 more. Well, we won that ball game, like Kitty said. We won 2-1. Ron Peranowski pitched the last 2 innings and helped preserve the win. I remember I called my mom and dad after that at home in Southern California. We were in Washington, D.C., and they already had heard that we won. So I remember my dad, who was a huge Frank Howard fan, we talked about the game a little bit, and finally he asked me, well, son, in his Dutch accent, how did Frank Howard do against you? I said, Dad, 0 for 3, and I struck him out once. Dad? Dad? He hung up on me. He wanted Frank Howard to take me deep. Over my playing career, I had a chance to play on the same field with so many great players, a lot of them sitting behind me here today. Hopefully one day other great players, like Jim Cott, Tony Oliva, Tommy John, will be sitting up here with us. I've been very fortunate in my life to play a kid's game for 22 seasons. And now I'm still around the game that I love as a broadcaster for the Minnesota Twins. I want to thank a special thank you to Dick Bramer, my play-by-play partner, for putting up with me for over these last 16 years. And to all the Twin fans for allowing us into your homes. Also to the Twins organization for the opportunity to stay around the game I love. I'm very proud to be inducted in as a Minnesota Twin. I would like to thank all my managers, coaches, teammates, trainers, clubhouse personnel, front office staff for all your help throughout my playing career. I know a lot of you are probably waiting for me to do something silly or stupid. Well, not today, but another day for sure. No hot foots and no mooning. It was an honor for me to wear a Major League uniform for the Minnesota Twins, the Texas Rangers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Cleveland Indians, and now called the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. I took a lot of pride in wearing all those uniforms. As my good friend Jay Black of Jay and the Americans told me, this is your magic moment. Today I take a lot of pride in being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. To be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame is the highest honor an athlete can get. I am very thankful for this honor. And thank you for coming out and sitting through this heat. My family, I love you, and you are all hereby circled.